I'm going to get right into this. I'm going to start off with the two that got canceled last week and move to this week just very briefly. Jason Witt versus Josh Quinlan. Josh Quinlan had like one of those John Jones picograms in him last week after he's coming back from a 10-month suspension already for steroids. So basically, I see that one pretty much the same. I think Josh Quinlan is able to get the finish on Jason Witt, probably KO, probably early on. I just don't trust Jason Witt's chin. And the other one was Ariane Lipsky versus Priscilla Cachoeira. Lipsky just did not look good at weigh-ins last week, and now she's going to be cutting weight again this week. Um, I don't know. I just don't like it. I had Lipsky last week. I think I'm actually going to switch it up. I'm going to go with Cachoeira in this new one. She's going to make it ugly, make it dirty, and probably decision. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, I think I'm going to switch my pick on that one. I'm just not really feeling Lipsky after seeing her last week. All right, now I'm going to move into the new stuff. Youssef Zalal versus Damon Blackshear. Zalal is winless in his last three, all pretty close fights. Like, he didn't look terrible at all. His last fight was with Sean Woodson. It was close. And so was the fight against Sung Hoo Choi, excuse me. But both fights, I feel like he was playing catch up the whole time. He just didn't open up enough with his hands. The stuff he throws is good. It's very technical Muay Thai. He needs more volume. And for a guy who comes from a Muay Thai background, he really loves to grapple. He averages 2.3 per fight, but he also gets takedowns. He also gets taken down a lot too. He has a 56% takedown defense. Blackshear is coming off his is making his UFC debut, but he's been fighting very high competition his whole career. He fought Tony Gravely twice in his amateur career. He fought Pat Sabatini, Danny Sabatello, and the great Chris Montino. But he lost every single one of those except Gravely. He won one of them and lost one. He fought him twice. And I love Chris Montino. I like his tenacity. He's just going to go out there. He doesn't kill fight anyone, but he's not a great fighter. Probably pretty low in the division. I don't want to say worst. He's a grappler. Blackshear. He's a grappler. He's finished 8 of his wins by submission, including 3 out of his last 4. He knew his striking needed some work. He started training at Jackson Wink, and that was about 2 years ago, and it's definitely helped him a lot. I think it's definitely the explosive. He's definitely the more explosive, athletic striker, but Zalal is the more technical guy. All of Blackshear's wins have come by decision. Zalal's last 3 wins have all been decisions. Excuse me. All of Blackshear's losses have come by decision, and Zalal's last 3 wins have all been decision. Just path to victory right there. I really like the over on rounds here, but I'm gonna have to go with Zalal in this. He's cut basically. If he doesn't win this, he's got a lot more experience. He's looked really good against Woodson in that first round. Kind of slowed down after that, but I think Woodson's really good. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Zalal on this one. Not overly confident. Gonna move right into the next one. Actually, my thing's all fucked up. Oedo Osborne versus Tyson Nam. It's been a long time since the last time we've seen Nam. 18-month layoff, and he's finally making his return. He's a guy who goes out there, just looks for violence. He likes to use forward pressure a lot or just stand in the center and look for a finish the entire time. He does headhunt a lot, going to the head 81%, 75%, and 100% in his last 3 fights, although that 100% was a 30-second fight. 5 out of his last 6 wins have ended by finish, but he does have 12 losses, and that fan-friendly fight style is what gets him into trouble. He's no spring chicken either. He's 38 years old. I think he has lost a step, and he's a flyweight. That weight class that relies on quickness to compete at a high level. Osborne, like Nam, has very heavy hands. He also goes out there looking for a finish, but I think Osborne is the more well-rounded guy. He does actually have a sub wins. He has more sub wins than KOs, but we've seen his hands and they looked really good. But he actually is a good sub guy on the ground. A lot lighter on the feet. He's not heavy, planting on his front foot, and he's got about an even striking differential of 44% accuracy. And Nam has a minus 2.3 striking differential, 31% accuracy, and that's all he does is strike. So not that great numbers for a guy who just does that only. I don't think Oedo, will we be able to take this fight to the ground without hurting Nam first? He's got really good takedown defense, but I think Oedo outclasses him on the feet basically and takes this fight. So I'm going to go with Oedo Osborne, and we're going to move right into the next one, which is Gabriel Benitez versus Charles Ontiveros. Ontiveros hasn't gotten a win since 2019. He's 11-8 pro record and 0-2 in the UFC. He's a karate fighter. He has a total of 9 strikes landed and 45 strikes landed on him at 80% accuracy over his first 2 UFC fights, and he's been finished in both of those fights. And 75% of it takedowns attempted on him were landed. Benitez has lost 4 out of his last 5, 3 of those fights by KO. Both guys struggle with takedowns and prefer to strike, so I definitely expect to see this fight on stay on the feet. Benitez is a former featherweight and is pretty undersized, I think, for 155, but he had a lot of trouble making weight. He missed weight 3 out of the 4 fights he was scheduled for. Out of his last 4, including 2 canceled. So not a good look. I honestly think he was killing himself to make 145, and I think he's going to look definitely better. At least I think his chin will look a lot better without that drastic weight cut. He's had a big size disadvantage compared to Ontiveros, who's a huge 155er. He's got a 6-inch height, 5-inch reach advantage. Both guys go out there, get knocked out or knock someone out, basically. He's going to have to close the distance because of that reach disadvantage, and Ontiveros looks to keep his opponent at bay with that jab. And Benitez, I think, I don't know, he's got the experience, he's more technical. I just think that he's just the far better fighter, and I think he's able to bounce back pretty good in this one. Pretty favorable matchup, I think. And yeah, I'm gonna go Gabriel Benitez, and I'm gonna move right into next one: Nina Nunez versus Cynthia Calvillo. This was on like the main card yesterday. I don't know how it got all the way down here. Cynthia Calvillo has not looked good recently. She's on a 3-fight losing streak, and her last 2 have ended by KO, although there was only 6 weeks in between both of those KO losses, and she didn't really have time to recover from that brutal KO from Jessica Andrade, who's like top 2, top 3 in the division. But she's a very well-rounded fighter. I think she's a little undersized also in the division. She likes to grapple a lot. That's her forte. And after moving up to 125 in 2020, she's had trouble taking the fight to the ground. I think that has something to do with the size disadvantage now. And she's relied a lot more on her hands. But that could be also because she didn't move to AKA to work on her striking. But AKA is a gym that's also known for its wrestling, just as much as it's known for its striking, even though it's a kickboxing academy. Her striking isn't bad, but I don't really think she looks the way she did. Nina Nunez has only fought once in about 3 years. Her last time out was against Mackenzie Dern, where she was subbed in the first. She's moving up to flyweight in the division. Both girls are, actually, Calvillo was already, but this is her first fight, first flyweight fight. She's a striker, basically, but we only got to see her land 4 strikes against Dern. So tough to say what we're going to see, because it's basically going on 4 years and we've only seen, a couple of minutes of her, if that even. And in her last 2 fights, which were losses, she got taken down and controlled basically the whole time and finished in one of them. I think since Calvillo won't be at a size disadvantage because Nunez is just moving up now, and they are both like 5'6" or something, like they're both the same height. I think the size disadvantage will help. I think Calvillo since she won't be at a size disadvantage, that should help her get the fight to the ground, and that's where Nina Nunez has struggled recently. So I am going to go with Cynthia Calvillo in this one. And we're going to move right into the next one: Lukas Breski versus Martin Buday. This one's a pretty interesting matchup between 2 Contender Series alums, both 30 years old, about the same reach, and both guys, like most heavyweights, like to strike. Martin Buday, 10-1, with his only loss coming from his second pro fight against Juan Espino. Then went on to finish his next 6 fights. He's the bigger fighter, but by about 30 pounds. He's got about a 30-pound weight advantage. But not only is he extremely hard hitter, he has a shotgun leg kick to the body that he just loves to use. He's also a brown belt in BJJ. Breski has coming off a really one-sided beatdown over Dylan Potter. Potter was pretty much done, but the ref thought he tapped. He didn't tap, so it got overturned. But he looked great in that fight, and he was going to win that fight. He did seem to have a lot more of a grappling approach. Throws a lot looping punches. Doesn't really have the same power as Buday. Just more of like Buday has the power advantage for sure. He's the bigger guy. So Breski, I think, will have a lot more trouble with the wrestling too, getting the fight to the ground. So I'm gonna go with Martin Buday in this one. Uh, Not my most confident. I kind of like both these guys in the heavyweight division, but I think size plays a pretty big part in this fight, and I'm gonna go with Martin Buday. And we are gonna move right into the next one: Angela Hill versus Loopy Godinez. This one's a lot. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this one. I'm a big fan of Angela Hill. At least I think she's pretty much going to hang up her gloves. I think this could be her last fight. Honestly, she's lost 5 out of her last 6. Wasn't even close in her last time out against Virna Jandiroba, who's a grappler, but nowhere near as good as Loopy is. 3 out of those fights were split decisions, but they were like a majority of them were on the feet, and Angela Hill is good on the feet, and she got to fight her fight, and that's not how Loopy fights. Loopy is an absolute huge prospect, only a 5-fight UFC veteran. I see her breaking the top 15 or taking over 13 rank from Hill in this one. She's a suffocating grappler, averages 5.4 takedowns per fight at 46% accuracy. This is striker versus grappler, but even Loopy can still strike too, and it might not be the best striking, but it is powerful. Hill, who everyone knows, she's a former kickboxing champion. I think this one is pretty much an open and shut case. Got to go with Loopy Godinez, and I'm seeing. I think I'm pretty sure Angela Hill is going to call it quits after that one. So we're going to move right into the main event: GM3 Gerald Meerschaert versus Bruno Silva. Pretty interesting matchup here. I've always been a huge fan of Meerschaert. He's a great example of a grappler that's still super entertaining. I mean, he goes out there looking for a finish, or he gets finished looking for it. He's 34-15, has a 34-15 pro record, 32 wins by finish, 26 of them by sub. 11 of those losses have come by finish as well, mostly by sub. Yeah, what can I say? He's a great submission artist. That being said, Bruno Silva has looked nothing less than stellar so far in the UFC. He's 3-1, with his loss coming from Alex Pereira in his last time out. And God bless him, he went 3 rounds. He put up the closest fight we've seen Pereira have in the UFC so far. Another good striker. This is even more so though. This is like a classic striker versus grappler matchup here. Silva, great striker, very heavy right hand, a lot of forward pressure. He's got one of the most well-timed knees in the clinch. It just comes out of nowhere and lands it. He's got a great cardio too. Never throws one shot, always coming with combos. And when he smells blood in the water, he just goes for it. So I'm going to go with Silva here. He's a great up-and-coming guy in a pretty much bare middleweight division. So I think this probably brings him up pretty high. We'll probably see a better matchup next time out of him. So I'm going to go with Bruno Silva. And we're going to move right into the next one: Devin Clark versus Azamat Merzakinov. I don't know. Call me crazy. Call me crazy. I think Devin Clark is like a solid dog in this fight. Growing up in the UFC, he came in with a 5-0 record. 5 years later, he's 13-6, with wins over Alonzo Menifield, William Knight. He's faced high-level competition like Anthony Smith, Rakic, Blahovic. He came into the UFC a wrestler, but his striking has gotten light years better, and even gotten his first UFC KO in his last time out against William Knight. But I really think that he's turned himself into a pretty well-rounded guy, and I think we're seeing the best form that we've seen of him so far. Merzakinov only 2-0 in the UFC, 11-0 pro record, and has a win over very early on over Andre Nunez, who's surging in the middleweight division right now. He's very undersized for the division. He's 5'10", 71-inch reach. and has really struggled last time against Tafont and Nachukwi. He was getting outstruck 2-1 basically. Went 1 for 5 for takedowns, but then he landed a KO on the third. Um, and that was it. But he was going to lose if that didn't land, basically. Clark really seemed to struggle with high level grapplers like Kutalaba, Smith, Blahovic. That seems to be like his the weakest part of his game. If you can out grapple Devin Clark, you know he's really got nothing else left. Um, but I think he'll be able to grapple with Merzakinov, and I think he's a solid underdog in this. So I'm going to be betting on him. Who knows what's going to happen, but I'm going to take Devin Clark in this one. And we're going to move right into the next one, which is a fucking mouthful. Yasmine Jerugi versus Eisman Lucindo. Fucking A. Okay. Luregu? It's gotta be, right? Who the fuck cares? Luregu has a perfect 8-0 record. She's making her UFC debut. She's a great prospect. She's 23 years old. And I know it's kind of big shoes to fill, but she kind of reminds me of Joanna and Jacek. I know that sounds wild, but her striking is fast paced, relentless, and she's got killer instinct. Yeah, I said it. She's won 3 out of her last 4 by KO in the first round. Also throws combos, a lot of pressure, great kicks that she's very active with. But she's not only a good striker, her grappling is good too. She'll pepper in some takedowns in there. Super well rounded. She's a BJJ practitioner. Lucindo is also a prospect, but much more green. She's got more pro fights, but she's only 20 years old, 13-4 record, also making her debut. Also good on the feet. She's got a kickboxing style, crisp fundamental striking, but can also grapple too, like Jaragu. What the fuck is this shit? Fuck. Jaragu. Both these girls, I think, have bright futures, very high ceilings. Don't have anything really bad to say about either of them, which is kind of weird for 2 people making their debuts, 2 young prospects, but it's true. But now I'm gonna have to go with my favorite name, Jaragu. I think that she's just a little bit better, just a little bit more polished, a little bit more on her. She's a little bit more developed MMA fighter. So I'm gonna go with Yasmin in this one, and we're going to move. Thank God that's fucking over. We're going to move right into the co-main event, which is David Onama versus Nate Landwehr. Fireworks here for this one. Holy shit. This fight was actually going to happen like years ago on M1 when Nate was actually champ there. He was a 3-time champ there, but got canceled somehow. I don't actually know why. So we're seeing it now in the UFC. Onama 2-1 in the UFC, has a 100% finish rate. He's a massive 145er, fights out of my favorite gym, Glory MMA, shout out. He's only 3 weeks out of his last fight, but he's always in the gym. He's always training. He's 100% committed to being the best. He's got very heavy hands. He has a left hook that will come out of nowhere, and it's just as powerful as his right. And a lot of guys shoot on him because his striking, it's you don't want to strike with him too long. But he's got a great scramble. He's very strong and has no problem with reverse or a sub off his back. He gets a lot of subs. Landwehr is a guy who you never know who you're going to get with him. The guy got finished by Ludwig, the guy who finished Ludwig Klein, or the guy that got knocked out by Julian Erosa in under a minute. He's 2-2 in the UFC, and both losses have been by KO finish. He's a fun guy to watch, though. One of those guys that are genuinely insane, gets into wars. No offense to the guy, but he doesn't fight the smartest. I think there's a big difference in skill here, though, overall. And I think you got to go with David Onama in this one. I'm pretty confident in that. So we're going to move right into the main event. Super excited for this one. Marlon Vera versus Dominick Cruz. Pretty interesting matchup here. Cruz only has 3 career losses in 17 UFC fights, but 2 of them are in his last 4 fights. And he also took a 4-year hiatus, 4-ish years hiatus in there. Cruz is a guy who beat Dillashaw, Demetrius Johnson beat Faber twice, beat Joe Benavidez. Had a split decision win in his 2 fights ago against Casey Kenny, who isn't bad at all. Casey Kenny is good, but he's a guy that's outside of the top 20. And then was knocked down and almost finished by Pedro Munoz, who's 1-4 in his last 5. And that was the first knockdown he has since he landed one on Chinny Garbrandt 5 fights ago in 2019. And now Cruz has been knocked down in 3 out of his last 4. Marlon Vera, who's a UFC veteran and has been here in the UFC since he's been in the UFC since 2014, has finally put the pieces together. He's looked like the best we've ever seen. He brutalized Rob Font his last time out. Absolutely beat him up. He keeps his hands up very high and it blocks like all the damage to like his head, and he'll even bring him down. Like he's able to block kicks with it too, but he takes like no damage to the head at all. It's pretty crazy. He has a terrifying calf kick, and he always checks kicks too. Your feet are gonna hurt. Your legs are gonna hurt after you fight Marlon Vera. His striking is very technical Muay Thai. He has a lot of punching power. Cruz obviously is going to want to close the distance in this fight, and Vera has struggled with takedowns in the past. He has 68% takedown defense, and he's been taken down in his last 3 fights, but all fights were performance of the night awards and finishes. And most of the time it was because it was like a desperation takedown because they were already getting beat up on the feet. But I think this fight goes back to Cruz's chin. I don't trust it anymore. I think his quickness is he just doesn't look like himself, especially not for a 5-round fight. So I'm going to go with Marlon Vera in this one. And that is it. Wrapping it up. A lot of fights on this week. How many we got? Actually, not too many. Not too many. I take it back. 13 fights. All right, no brainer MMA. We're out of here. I'm out of here.